Hey there, welcome to another Tableau video. I'm going to do something a little bit different today, which is I'm going to look at Tableau prep, right? So the Tableau creator license, which I should bring up, is really made up of three parts, right? So let's just go Tableau. Let's just check out the products. Let's go here, right? And if I go products here, there's three main ones. You got your desktop, you got your prep, and your server and your online are kind of the same thing. One is just on-premise, which is Tableau server, and Tableau online, which is using the Tableau, like their server, not your own one, not your own company one, right? And up to this point, I've really just been doing Tableau desktop, which is just designing all the graphics. But you're going to get to a point where you're going to get really proficient with that. You're going to want to start incorporating more and more information. And usually what I do when I start with a new division or I'm teaching someone new or a whole team is when you first start building your dashboards, you kind of want to do the agile approach, which is just build it, don't worry too much about anomalies, and just get in the habit of design, adjust, publish, get some feedback. And then design, adjust, publish, get some feedback, And the quicker you can do that, the quicker your data, your dashboards, the quicker your team matures, right? To the point where you don't really have to change it anymore because you've gone and corrected as many of the issues as early as possible, right? And one of the questions that if you ever do Tableau training, one of the things they ask you is how often do you download data or are given data and it is perfectly clean, right? It's extremely rare. It's like when it happens, you almost don't trust the data. So what Tableau did, and I believe it was like early last year, they released something called Tableau Prep, right? So let's go ahead and open that. And the difficulty in explaining what prep is the fact that there isn't really anything else that does this. And so it's hard to kind of compare. Whereas in Tableau Desktop, you can say, you do bar charts, you do line charts, just like you do in Excel, just like you do in other programs. But Tableau Prep is a cleansing software that personally I've never had anything close to this. So when I was kind of learning for the first time, even watching the videos, I still wasn't too sure what it did, right? And then there's that kind of moment that you do it and you're like, oh my God, did that just do what I think it did, right? That would have taken me an hour in Excel, like those little things. So what I'm going to do is in this video is do a demo of the actual software, right? So what I've done is I've gotten just the Superstore data, right, from Tableau as our sample, and I'm going to open it in Excel just to show you what's in it, right? And as you can see, this is kind of the information that we have in it, right? So pretty standard stuff, right? Nothing too crazy, okay? But I'm gonna make a few adjustments here, okay? In this one, I'm gonna replace all the slashes with, I don't know, let's say a dash, right? Let's go replace all, and go close, all right? Did that replace them all? Did that even do anything? I don't think it did. Hang on, hang on. Let's close this first. Let's just go. Try that again. Find, replace, replace that with a dash. Eh? Oh, that's not doing anything. All right, we're just gonna ignore that for the time being. Why is that doing that? Right? Anyways, we have some data, right? And what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna show you the different cleaning things you can do with it, right? I'm not too sure why that CSV thing wasn't working. But anywho, let's open up Tableau Prep. So it works in terms of data loading, it works very similarly to desktop, right? But it doesn't graph anything. It just prepares data, right? So let's just bring this over here. And just like Tableau Desktop, you have heaps of things you can kind of connect to, right? But we're going to start with the most basic, which is like CSV file. So let's grab that. Let's drop it in here. Okay, and let's maximize this. Now, there's kind of three main sections when you get started, right? There's the left, which is like your connections and what's in that connection. So a CSV is only ever one sheet, right? So this is the sheet here. If it was an Excel file, all my sheets would be here, okay? And each one, let's say I remove this, if I have multiple ones, it's gonna ask me which one I wanna put in. So you just grab it and you drop it onto your canvas, right? So you can probably guess that this part is like your working area where it shows each step that you do in terms of a cleanse. Okay. Then this bottom part shows you the what actions you're going to do. Okay. So I'm not going to get into too much detail about all these kinds of features. A lot of this just automatically gets set anyway when you start, right? But the thing to look at is this one here. This is going to show you all the fields in your data set, right? As you can see, all the field names, right? And the sample values, what's in them, and then also the data type. So you got numbers, you got strings and all that. And whilst it may be tempting to change the data type here, I actually don't like to, right? I like to do that in the next step so that I can actually see a history of what I'm doing to the data. And that's really beneficial for if someone else is going to run this for you, or you're going on leave for 3 weeks, they can actually try and follow the breadcrumbs to see how you've done things, okay? So the way the cleanse works in prep is it's almost like it remembers each step that you do in a cleanse from start to finish. When you're cleaning things in Excel, right? You get the raw file, you clean it, you save it at the end, and basically there is no history of what you did, right? There's just the original file and your future file. That's it. There's no in between. So in order to tell someone here's how I did it, it's really hard to explain it, right? Because it's after the fact. Whereas in Tableau Prep, you're not actually cleaning it. In a sense, you're actually programming it to clean, right? So it remembers what you're telling it to do. So it's almost like your slave. It's like, here's what you do, and when I press play, I want you to do all those things, okay? So let's begin by just adding a step. And a step is basically, um, in an Excel file, for example, the first thing I'm going to do is change everything to uppercase, okay? That's a step. Or I'm going to multiply all this entire column by 5. That's a step. Anytime you're going to do an operation, it's a step. In Tableau Prep, you can do multiple things in a single step. So before we actually do an operation, let me explain what this is. I'm just going to minimize this left side. So this looks obviously very different to Excel. And you're going to notice two main sections here, right? The top one here, right? And then the bottom one, okay? The bottom one, actually, I'll get to that in a second. The top one shows each of the fields, okay? And it shows a number of things. Number one, it shows you the data type, the label, right? And then it shows you what's actually in that column. So for me, it's telling me that in days to ship, the only numbers that exist in that column are 0 to 8. And then these bars are like the conditional bar format in Excel. It's telling me 4 has the highest number of, like it exists the most in that data set, right? And there's a few things I can do. Let's say 0 is, that's nothing. Anytime it's a 0, there's no action needed from me, right? Because that claim is paid, for example. So I actually just go right click, exclude. And that excludes anything with a 0 in the row from my data set. That's it. In Excel, you would have to filter for the zeros, you'd have to delete the rows, you'd have to take off the filter. So again, that was one click. The other thing you can do is, let's say 1 through 4, you want to group them together, right? So all I do is I click on this one, I hold shift, right, to select multiple ones. I right click and I can go group. And that puts them all together for me. And I can call this 1 through 4. Oop, hang on. I can't do that because that's a number. So let's just call this 4. Okay. And then I can do this one and group these together. And let's call it 8. Right. But I don't want to call it 4 and 8. I want to call it 1 through 4. So I can change the data type to string. Okay. I can rename this. I can go 1 through 4. I can rename this, which is 5 through 8. Okay. Now you'll remember before that I said Tableau Prep remembers what you did. Okay. So if you click on this little thing right here, okay, in here is the history of what we just did. Okay. And what you can do is you can actually go back in time. So if I click this first one, right, the first thing I'm going to do is exclude 0. So you can see 0 is gone, but the operations I just did are missing. And as I go through, it actually shows me what I did on each step. Okay. So that's just rendering. Hang on. Let me just do that again. There we go. So for some reason, that one's not showing. But in this one, you got your grouping there. Okay. Then after that, what I did was I changed the data type and then I changed the label. So again, it's going to remember everything you want it to do. Okay, let's go to the next one. All right. What other things we can do? How do I make this smaller? Okay. So let's say I've got this one right here. Okay. This is actually a number, but I've got all these characters in it. I've got brackets and stuff. So I can actually clear that out. So if I just click on this more options, I can go clean and I can go remove punctuation, right? And then that's gotten rid of all the brackets. And then I also want to try and get rid of all these, um, the pound symbols, right? So what I can do is use a calculation. So in Excel, you would have to make a new column, you do the formula, you replace the old one, then you delete the column, right? In here, the way it works is if I right click and go create calculated field, I can use the replace formula, right? So I'm gonna go replace, hang on, right? And I'm gonna put that in the first part and we're going to replace that pound symbol. So actually, I'm gonna go grab that pound symbol. So let's grab this symbol right here. Okay, we're gonna go and create calculated field. Let's put that pound symbol in. Let's go replace. All right, we're gonna replace this with nothing. Okay, then what I'm gonna do is, here's a little trick. You name this exactly the same as what you had before. And what that does is it replaces it, right? Per customer, right? And I just go save. All right, and you see that they're all gone. In addition to that, I want this to be a number because I'm going to do formulas later, right? So if I click on this, they're all numbers now. In Excel, you would have to, correct it some way. What I usually do is multiply it by 1, create a new column, replace it, then put it back in. It's quite a bit of work, right? So that's another trick you can do. You can also, let's see what else is there. You can rename things. So let's say in this one right here, the only things that exist are profitable and unprofitable, right? But let's say I don't like naming at those things. I can just double click and go cash positive, right? And call this one cash, whoop, negative, okay? And that replaces all of them straight away. So again, very, very easy. I can also do things like, let's say I want to make these all uppercase or lowercase. I can go here, I can go clean, make all uppercase, right? And that makes them all uppercase. You can also make them all lowercase, right? You can trim spaces. So if you have spaces on the end, that's already a preset formula. We're not going to get into that one. We're not going to get into that one, right? I can also do things like, let's say I'm in country, right? There's this extra view that you can see. Now, what this shows me, right? And it's really, really neat. I'll do it on customer name actually. You see that how this list is really long. There's a lot of things in here. And what this little thing shows you is the total list and how it's distributed, right? So again, it's like those conditional format bars. In this one, for example, I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, right? You can just see them that, oh, there's a few items in here that are really, really high. So what I can do is actually bring them to the top, right? So I can just sort it. So for some reason, France is like makes up for most of this stuff, right? So again, it's insight. It shows you what the data is. Otherwise, in Excel, what you would have to do to get this is, number one, you'd have to pivot table, or you'd have to take them all out, do some sort of count, some sort of summary. Here, it's just everything's just there, right? Let's see what else. I can do this. The other thing that's really good about this is it can recognize dates, like really complex dates. Like sometimes I have something like um, 11 Jan 2019, and it can read it. It can convert it to correct date formats. Like I can have something like that, and it seems to work fine, right? So date-wise, it's really, really good. What else? We can do excludes, we can do nulls. Other thing is sometimes when you download from like databases, there's a lot of fields in there, but maybe you don't need everything. So for example, you want to get rid of a field, you can just go in here and go remove, right? And again, if you ever wanted to bring it back, you just go to your history right? And everything's in there, everything we've done. And the cool thing about this is, let's say you were going to use this history field or this ship mode field for something, and you're like, oh, I actually didn't want to delete that yet, or I wanted to delete that earlier. You can actually move these around, right? So you can actually change the series of events that you've applied to this cleanse, right? And the beauty of this as well is because it's programmed, when you download your fresh data source, let's say you do daily tracking, you download your fresh data source, you come in here and you just press refresh. You don't have to execute the cleanse again manually, which I know a lot of, companies do, a lot of divisions do, a lot of people do when they don't know about this kind of technology. They come in, they download the data, they do all their Excel stuff. A lot of it is manual. A few hours later, they're done. Whereas here, the first day takes a few hours to set it up. Every day after that, it's seconds, right? So in my line of work, we went from doing things that took for a cleanse maybe 10 hours, sometimes longer, and we brought that down to minutes. It's insane. It's insane what it can do, right? So you can do that kind of stuff. Oh, I never explained this bottom bit. This bottom bit is actually the table itself, right? And what you can do is, like, if I click this one, you'll notice that some of these colors change. And what that means is, for these rows, right, that are grouped in here, they exist in the following, right? So 1002.6 doesn't exist in this data set. So again, another cool way to see how things are connected, right? You can see that office supplies is about half. Yeah, they're about half, right? So that's kind of like the basic stuff you can do there. And then, like, let's say I just want to see, well, everything that I got. This is what the table actually looks like, right? So if you want to see it, right? Okay, now the other things you can do in here are, without getting too crazy, I'll show you, like, let's say where's that number that we cleaned up? Uh, choo, 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 choo. Units estimate, right? So let's say this one, right? I think that's what we cleaned up. Or, oh, here, profit per customer, right? So let's say I want to group that as an aggregate, as a summary, right? I can click on step, or this square button, not square, cross, and go add step. So again, it's another step in my process. And, oh, actually, no, that's not what I want to do. If I click the plus, I go add aggregate, right? And this lets me do a summary. So let's say, what was it called again? Profit per customer, right? So go ahead and grab that, profit per customer. I can drop it here in the aggregate field. So it's going to sum them up. And then I can go in and divide that. So let's say I got category, right? Again, it's split it. And I want a subcategory as well. So let's say a subcategory. And again, it's split it. Now, let's say I've got my result out. I can click this plus and go add output. And I can go output into a CSV. Let's go downloads, right? Let's just call it output. Yes. And I just have to run it. So if I go run flow, replace, right? It executes all the things that we set up in here, and then it spits out a result. Okay. So now if I go into my downloads and I look for that output file, right? Here it is here. Okay. And this is really good because you can actually have as many outputs as you like. So for example, let's say this was an aggregate that we did because I need to do this for Paul, right? But then John needs another analysis. What I can actually do is go plus, and he wants a different aggregate. So I go aggregate, right? So I got another flow. I change this one. So let's say he goes, oh, I don't need subcategory. I just need it by, let's grab a number. He needs a discount by region. Okay, so now I can do a subcategory, but he wants it as an average. So let's change that to average. Okay, so now he has that. Again, I can do an output, right? He wants it in a CSV. Let's output it, output 2 into downloads. Yes, replace whatever I had there, right? And the way it works is, instead of pressing each of these individually, I can press play and it'll run each of those files, right? And that error is because I have the file open, right? But the beauty of this is I don't have to do an individual analysis for everybody. I can output as many things as I like, and you can get pretty complex and do some pretty crazy stuff. The other things you can also do is you can do joins, you can do unions, which I'm not going to demonstrate. That's kind of a bit more advanced once you start using it. You can also use this one, right, which is add pivot, which actually it's not really pivot. It's more like unpivot. So sometimes data comes to you that's already pivoted, right? Which means like let me see if I can find an example. Let's see. Let's grab sales map. Let's just do an example. So let's say I've got this and I do my pivot and I'm going to do something like category. Let's grab subcategory, something like this, and I'm going to grab sales. Let's actually switch this around. How do I switch rows and columns from memory? Oh, actually, you can't. I just gotta do it here, right? So let's say I get data like this. What the pivot feature in Tableau Prep does is it converts it from this back to hang on, there we go, back to this format, which is how Tableau reads things, Tableau desktop, right? And pretty much most database, every database reads it like this, right? Where the data is going downwards. When it's a pivot, databases don't really read like that, right? When it's like this. Okay, so what Tableau Prep does is it reverses that using the unpivot feature, which is that one. Where's it? That one there, right? And to give you an idea of how complex you can make this and how many outputs and all that stuff, let me show you a sample of that comes with Tableau Prep that you can use to kind of play around with. All right. So if I just click on this Superstore one here, right? This is an example. So what they have is they have 4 data sources, right? And then they do some sort of cleanup. So the symbols here actually say roughly what gets done. So in here, I know some filtering gets done, which means he or she is getting rid of some values. They got some calculations. You got some data type changes. You got some grouping, right? There's some more changes here. And then he or she, it's 2018. So in this one, right, they're actually putting them together in terms of stacking the data so that it becomes one giant data set instead of 4 different data sets, right? And the way the unions work is actually quite beautiful. It actually shows you using colors which ones exist in where, right? So in terms of the field headings, all 4 colors are here. That tells me that all of them exist in that data set in every single case actually, which means all 4 data sets are exactly the same in terms of structure. Then what they did was they grabbed another file, right? And they joined them using a union, which is right here. So if I bring up the union, there's no SQL programming of union here. All you do is select what your joins are going to be. So the left and right join, right? And then you set in here what kind of join type. So in this case, it's a inner right, right? So you go your inner right, and then in here is a summary of what actually matched and what didn't match. So the total join is this much, right? This is how much that was excluded. This is how much that came in, right? It's amazing. The fact that it can display it in this way, it just makes it so much easier. Then what happens is they do a step here, which cleans it. They output to this location for somebody, right? They do another aggregate. In here you have another data set introduced that gets unpivoted, right? It's that reverse pivot. They do an inner join, right? As you can see here, only the ones that match, right, with these fields. And then the final result, okay? Now, what's great about this is someone else could have built this, right? I can see exactly what is being done to the raw data source. You can't really get that in Excel, right? Which is why this software is so good, right? On that note, I'm probably going to end it here. So ran a little bit long. I kind of just improvised a lot of this. So I hope you enjoyed. Let me know what you think and if you want like a shorter version of this, and I'll see what I can do about making one for that as well. All right, so I hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you next time.